I gave them 14 years of my life. Not flashy years, just quiet, consistent work. Numbers that spoke louder than I ever did. But when the new manager came in with his buzzwords and expensive watch, I became obsolete overnight. "You're not ambitious enough," he told me, while looking over my shoulder, already done with the conversation. So I packed my things. I didn't argue. I just disappeared. The room felt colder than usual that day. Maybe it was the air conditioning. Maybe it was him. He didn't even bother to sit down. He stood behind his desk like a judge reading a sentence. "We're restructuring," he said, flipping through papers he didn't need to look at. Then came the real blow, clean and simple. "You're not ambitious enough." That was it. After 14 years, that was the summary of my entire career. No mention of the record sales, no recognition of the campaigns I led solo. No thanks. Just that hollow phrase and a manufactured smile. I looked at my coffee mug and said nothing. I didn't argue. What was the point? This wasn't a conversation. It was a decision already made. I remembered every late night I stayed to finish reports no one read. Every weekend I worked while others partied. Every win the company took credit for. None of it mattered now. The guy replacing me? Loud, flashy, always knew the right people to flatter. I wasn't a brand, I was a tool. Used and now discarded. They walked me out like a ghost no one dared to touch. 14 years turned into silence and a box of my belongings. As I walked past the cubicles, I noticed how quickly people became blind. Nobody met my eyes. Nobody said goodbye. A few even looked relieved. I felt invisible. Not in a bitter way. Just in the way a paper becomes irrelevant once it's been signed and filed away. I always believed loyalty meant something. I thought, showing up early, never causing problems, delivering results quietly, was enough. But the game changed. Loud mattered more than loyal. Appearances beat results. They didn't want real work. They wanted noise. And I was too quiet for their circus. That night I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat. My apartment felt smaller than usual. My phone was silent. No one called. No one checked in. I wasn't surprised. I had spent so much time being the reliable one, the fixer, the background hero, that I had forgotten how to ask for help. But I didn't need help. I needed clarity, and I had it. They took my title, not my mind. They took my paycheck, not my discipline. They removed me from their ladder, but I never wanted to climb it in the first place. I had other plans. I opened my laptop and went to a folder labeled Someday. Inside, spreadsheets, market data, startup names, a domain I registered 2 years ago, just in case. I had been preparing without even realizing it. I wasn't going to beg for another job. I wasn't going to smile through interviews or write another cover letter filled with lies. I was done playing small. I wasn't fired. I was freed. I didn't know how long it would take, but I knew what I wanted. Independence. Legacy. Revenge, maybe. But not the loud kind. The kind they would see every day from across the street. The first few weeks felt strange. No alarm clock, no commute, no fake smiles or empty meetings. I woke up without the weight of someone else's expectations, just the pressure I put on myself. I made a rule. No self-pity, no distractions. Every morning I brewed coffee, opened my laptop, and studied. I read about markets, consumer behavior, branding psychology. I watched interviews, absorbed strategies, dissected case studies. It wasn't about motivation. It was war prep. Quiet, internal war. I didn't want to be rich to prove anything. I wanted to never depend on anyone again. Not a company, not a title. Just me. Money was tight, but I was smart. I cut everything. Non-essential, canceled subscriptions, cooked at home, sold old furniture online. I took pride in the discipline. Every dollar had a destination now. I kept a whiteboard on the wall with goals, timelines, and milestones. No one else saw it, but it was more real than any corporate memo I'd ever received. And for the first time in years, I felt something strange. Control. Every choice, every hour spent was mine. No supervisor breathing down my neck. No artificial deadlines. Just purpose. I wasn't making noise, but I was building momentum. Started small. A digital store focused on a niche I knew well. Productivity tools. Not glamorous, but honest. I knew what professionals needed because I had been one. My first product was a refined version of a time-tracking spreadsheet I had built for myself years ago. I dressed it up, added functionality, branded it clean. Uploaded, waited. The first sale came a week later, $9. Not much, but it was mine. It was the first time someone paid me directly for something I created, not for hours I traded. And that changed everything. That one sale became 3, then 10. I reinvested every cent, improved the product, added more tools, tested ad copies. I failed often. Ads that flopped, emails that bounced, campaigns that did nothing. But each failure taught me something my old job never could. How to move fast, how to adapt, how to own both the wins and the losses. No one else to blame, no one else to wait for. I started working 16-hour days. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. It wasn't work anymore. It was a mission. Within 6 months, I had 3 products, 2 small virtual assistants, and revenue that surpassed my old salary. No one saw it coming. I still lived in the same modest apartment, still dressed like I did before. I didn't post about it, didn't tell anyone. But the silence was intentional. I wanted them to forget me. I wanted them to believe they were right. Because when I showed up again, it wouldn't be to explain. It would be to remind them that not all ambition is loud. Sometimes it builds in silence, and then it hits like thunder. I didn't celebrate milestones, not publicly. No champagne, no selfies. Just a quiet nod to myself and then back to work. The first time I hit 5 figures in monthly revenue, I barely reacted. I knew what that money meant. Freedom. But I wasn't done. I wasn't chasing numbers. I was building leverage. And I knew the difference. I reinvested almost everything. Hired a freelance designer to elevate my brand. Bought a better laptop. Upgraded hosting. Slowly, my small website turned into a polished digital ecosystem. People started noticing, but not the ones I wanted. Not yet. My old co-workers still posted photos at happy hour, promotions, conference selfies, fake smiles. The same office culture I once thought I needed to survive. I watched from a distance, not out of envy, out of clarity. I wasn't one of them anymore. They lived for performance reviews. I lived for execution. Every dollar I earned was mine. Every idea, every system, every detail, mine. I didn't miss the office. I missed being underestimated. It gave me fuel. That memory of being called not ambitious enough played in my head daily, like a quiet anthem. Then came the investors. One of my tools had gone viral in a niche productivity forum. Traffic surged. I had a decision to make: scale or stay lean. I chose control. No partners, no shareholders. I declined every offer, even the ones with commas. I didn't want a boardroom. I wanted peace. I scaled with freelancers and automation. Built a team without ever saying the word team. We worked remotely. Clean, simple processes. No meetings, no politics, just results. I paid people well, treated them with respect, and expected excellence. Turns out that's all it takes. Eventually, I outgrew my apartment. Not just financially. Mentally. I needed a space that matched my new mindset. I found a modern loft with huge windows and silence thick as armor. No fancy neighborhood, just privacy. I still dressed plain. Still went to the same corner coffee shop. I didn't want to look successful. I wanted to be untouchable. And I was getting close. Every invoice I paid, every contract I signed, every wire that hit my account, it all reminded me. They didn't fire me. They freed me. And now, I was becoming something they couldn't afford to ignore. I never planned revenge. Not directly. I just wanted them to feel what I felt. Powerlessness. That sting of being discarded after giving your best. But fate handed me something better. A marketing agency reached out. They wanted to rent ad space across downtown. One of the buildings they listed was directly across from my old office. I didn't even hesitate. I bought the space outright. Designed a sleek black and white campaign featuring my face and the tagline, "Still think I wasn't ambitious enough?" I didn't need them to respond, just to see it, every single day. The billboard went up on a Wednesday. I didn't announce it, didn't even drive by the office that day, but I knew they saw it. It was angled perfectly, right across from the building's main entrance. Clean background, bold font, my face, in grayscale. Nothing flashy, just undeniable. I imagined the morning coffee runs, the elevator rides, the awkward glances. I didn't need to be there to feel it. The silence after impact is louder than applause. And that silence belonged to me now. I wasn't shouting. I was watching. A week later, I received a message from someone I hadn't heard from in years. One of the managers who had stayed quiet during my firing. She said she saw the billboard and had a gut feeling it was me. She asked what I was doing now, if I ever thought about returning to corporate. I didn't reply. Not out of arrogance, out of clarity. Going back would have been a downgrade, like squeezing into old clothes you've outgrown. I wasn't built for that anymore. I built something better. And I didn't owe explanations to anyone. The billboard wasn't revenge. It was closure. A visible marker that I no longer belonged to that world. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good. Every time someone from that office walked outside, they had to look at it. They had to think about what they said, what they did, or what they failed to do when they stayed silent. My absence had more presence than I ever did sitting at that desk. That was the lesson. Sometimes the best way to speak is to leave, and then let success do the talking. Some of them tried to reconnect. Old friends from the office, people who never stood up for me, who once copied my ideas and took credit. Suddenly they were liking my posts, sending polite emails, talking about how inspiring my journey was. I ignored most of them, not out of spite, but because I remembered everything. The fake smiles, the tight-lipped goodbyes, the silence when I was walked out like a mistake. They didn't miss me. They missed proximity to what I'd built. And I wasn't interested in sharing. I started getting invited to panels, startup, events, podcasts. I declined most of them. My life was already full, not with noise, but with meaning. I didn't need public validation. My clients respected me. My business was growing. And most importantly, I respected myself. Something I hadn't truly felt in years. The billboard stayed up for 6 months. I never changed it, never added to it. Just let it sit there like a monument. A quiet reminder that ambition doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just waits, and then takes over everything you once thought you controlled. The real irony came months later, when I heard through a mutual contact that the company was bleeding talent. High turnover, low morale, clients backing out of contracts. I didn't feel joy, just confirmation. The foundation had always been fragile. They just didn't see it because people like me held it up in silence. When they let me go, they didn't just lose an employee. They lost the one person who never dropped the ball. The one who stayed late without complaining. The one who made problems disappear before they reached the surface. They replaced me with noise, and noise doesn't last. Then came the moment I never planned for, a call from the new manager. The same one who called me not ambitious enough. His voice was different now. Softer. Calculated. He said he admired my work, pretended to have followed my progress. He didn't mention the billboard, didn't mention how he dismissed me. He just said the company was exploring partnerships and thought I could bring value. I smiled as I listened, said I appreciated the call, that I'd think about it. I didn't hang up bitter. I hung up in control. I could have said a lot, could have reminded him of what he said, could have listed my accomplishments just to hear him squirm, but I didn't. I didn't need to. The fact that he called me said everything. He knew. They all knew. I was the one that got away. And now I wasn't just gone. I had built something better, something untouchable. I didn't burn bridges. I built my own city across the river. And now they wanted access. But they didn't deserve a map. Not anymore. People assume revenge means fire and fury, rage, destruction. But that's not how power works. Real power is quiet. It doesn't shout. It moves in silence. Then suddenly you look up. And it's everywhere. I didn't want to destroy them. I wanted them to see me win and know they had no part in it. That they were the reason I disappeared. And the reason I came back stronger. That kind of revenge doesn't need permission. It just arrives. On time. Dressed in success. Eventually, I removed the billboard. Not out of mercy. Out of evolution. I didn't need reminders anymore. My business had grown beyond what that version of me ever imagined. I had employees in multiple countries. Clients I'd never meet face to face. My days were no longer about proving myself. They were about building legacies. And every time I opened a new partnership, Every time I signed off on a deal, I thought of that moment in the office, when he looked over my shoulder and told me I wasn't ambitious enough. Funny. That sentence made me everything I am now. Success doesn't feel the way I thought it would. There were no fireworks, no cinematic music. Just a quiet morning in my new office, sunlight pouring through the windows, and my calendar already full of meetings I actually looked forward to. My life wasn't glamorous. It was deliberate. Everything had intention. From the way I structured my time to the people I allowed near me. I had learned to protect my peace like it was profit. And in many ways, it was. Peace is the most expensive thing success can buy, and I paid for it with every humiliation I swallowed in silence. I thought a lot about the version of me that used to sit quietly in meetings, waiting to be acknowledged. The man who thought loyalty would be repaid with opportunity. He wasn't weak, just naive. He believed in a system that was never built for people like him. But he learned. Pain is an excellent teacher, and when the world pushed me out of the only room I knew, I didn't cry in the hallway. I found another building and built my own table. That's what no one tells you. Getting pushed out hurts, but it also frees you from limits you never questioned. I don't hate them anymore. The ones who fired me, the ones who stayed silent, the ones who smiled in my face and let it happen. They weren't villains, just people surviving in a system that rewards appearance over value. I used to think I wanted an apology. Now I realize I wanted distance. Space to grow without being boxed in by their opinions. What they said that day was cruel, yes. But it was also useful. They gave me the final push. They thought they were cutting me down, but they were planting something. And I grew roots deeper than they ever imagined. People often ask what changed. How did I go from being just another employee to owning a business that scaled across continents? I always give the same answer: silence. I stopped explaining myself, stopped asking for permission. I learned that real growth happens when no one's watching. No likes, no approval, no applause. Just relentless, uncomfortable progress. It's not sexy, but it's real. While they were posting wins, I was stacking bricks. And now that the building's finished, they all want to know how I did it. But some things you have to earn, and they never earned the truth. Sometimes I pass that old office, not on purpose. It's just part of my city now. I look at the lobby, the badge scanner, the same glass doors I once walked through 100 times without being seen. I wonder if anyone inside still remembers me, or if they ever talk about that guy who left one day and never came back. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. But I know this. They can't forget the billboard. They can't erase what I became. And if they ever wonder how I did it, good. Let them wonder. One of the partners I signed recently used to work with my old boss. He didn't recognize me at first. Just pitched his service, trying to impress me with case studies and numbers I'd memorized a decade ago. I listened, nodded, asked questions. Professional, unbothered. Then I said my full name. His face changed. Slight pause, eyes slightly wider, voice more careful. That's when I knew. My name meant something now. Not because I chased recognition, but because I built something that couldn't be ignored. And people talk, especially when the quiet ones start making noise. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't smug. I was calm. The kind of calm that only comes when you've already won and don't need to prove it. He didn't ask about the billboard. I didn't bring it up. We kept things professional. I chose to work with his firm, not because I needed them, but because I wanted them to know who they were working for now. That's the thing about power. The real kind doesn't demand respect. It just exists. You walk in and the room shifts. No raised voice, no threats, just presence. And mine spoke volumes. The team I built didn't know my past. They didn't need to. I never talked about the firing, never showed them the office. To them, I was just the founder. The one with a clear vision, high standards, and zero tolerance for shortcuts. They saw the present. That's all that mattered. But sometimes when I watched them work, I felt grateful. Not for the pain, but for the clarity it brought. If I hadn't been pushed out, I would have stayed small forever. Comfortable, safe, and I never would have discovered how far I could really go. People always romanticize the climb, as if success is this glorious, cinematic journey. But mine wasn't like that. It was cold, quiet, disciplined. I didn't have cheerleaders, no viral moments, no speeches, just early mornings, late nights, and the decision to never go back. That's what separated me from them. I didn't want revenge that looked good on social media. I wanted a life where I never had to explain myself again, and I got it, brick by brick, invoice by invoice, failure by failure. Until one day I looked up, and I wasn't behind anymore. I was ahead. Sometimes, when it's quiet, I still hear his voice. You're not ambitious enough. It doesn't sting anymore. It echoes like a warning, not for me, but for others. For the next quiet one in the room, getting dismissed because they don't shout. I wish I could tell them what I've learned. That ambition doesn't always look like hunger. Sometimes it looks like restraint, like discipline, like patience. That's what they never saw in me. But now they have to see it. Because I turned their rejection into an empire, and I did it without ever raising my voice. People think success is loud, that it comes with applause, celebration, validation. But mine didn't sound like that. Mine sounded like focus, like shutting the door on doubt, like typing through the night while the rest of the world was scrolling through distractions. My victory wasn't something I posted about. It was something I lived, day by day, quietly, strategically, fully aware that the best form of revenge wasn't to destroy the people who hurt me. It was to become someone they could never reach again. I don't tell this story to prove anything. I tell it because someone out there is probably sitting in a break room right now, wondering if it's worth it. If the silence, the disrespect, the invisibility means they've failed, it doesn't. It means they're being underestimated. And that's fuel. That's leverage. That's the quiet before the shift. I wasn't fired because I lacked ambition. I was fired because I outgrew a system that didn't know what to do with someone like me. And instead of shrinking myself to fit it, I walked out and built something better. Sometimes, when I walk past that old building, I catch a glimpse of my reflection in the glass. Not out of vanity, out of memory. I see the version of me who once walked those halls with his head down. The guy who gave everything and asked for nothing. He's gone now. Not because he failed, but because he evolved. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that being discarded by small minds is often the first step toward building a life so big they wouldn't even understand it if you explained it. I never needed to hear, "I'm sorry." I didn't need a second chance or a letter of recommendation. What I needed was space. Room to become what I was always meant to be. And I took it. I made it. I claimed it. Not by shouting louder, but by never stopping, never folding, never becoming like them. I don't walk into rooms needing approval anymore. I walk in already knowing who I am. And I owe that to the day they showed me the door. He said I wasn't ambitious enough, and now he sees my face every day, whether he wants to or not.